Okay, we're at the final part of the day where this incredible book has just landed on our shores in Australia. I get the opportunity to be involved in lots of projects. Every month, 5 or 6 projects are presented to me, and you can't work on everything. And when I got a chance to read this and be part of the review and audio review process that we did for a program called the Leadership Lounge, I just loved it. A lot of you have heard Bradley Brown speak on audio with me before. He did Leading Change 1 and 2, very famous audio in this country. He then did Ryro, which blew the country apart and showed what international recruitment is all about without all the fluff and just the system that he built to do that. And I'd done all the business work, and then Bradley spoke to me about this project, and I got to read the book and was like, wow, I didn't know this side of you. And it's not what I thought it would be, but I love it. And I want you to do it at the Complete Leader. At the end of today, I want to give every one of you a copy of this book. As part of your time and investment of your time for being here, when Bradley's talk finishes, and he's going to talk through in summary over the book and what's in there, it's an incredible read. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Bradley Brown.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you all very much. A book like this wouldn't be possible without content provided by a lot of people. So I'd firstly like to thank my American family, where I spent my first 25 years, and they've made me who I am. And for the last 32 years living in Australia, my wife, my kids, my extended family provide that daily motivation, that reason we get up, that reason we do the things we do, and the anecdotes and the stories and the love and the sharing comes from them. And these influencers in your life. I can think back to a very, very troubled, unhappy childhood, and a coach on my primary school playground named Coach Alexis took an interest in me. She was nice to me. She helped shape me. And then you follow that on with other influencers like Dr. Covey and Dr. Fred and Christopher Steer and all these wonderful people who come into your life. And they help form what is your life, what makes it up. I'd like to thank my publishers, Bounce, who helped to bring this project to conclusion. Without them, I'm not sure it would have happened. And the Real Estate Academy. I took this to Lee early on as a concept. His professionalism, his experience, his knowledge really helped me to actually make it a reality. So thank you very much, and I'm thrilled to have Lee as the forward in the book. The people that have read this so far have just been colleagues, because this book has actually just arrived on the shores, as they said. It's been colleagues, friends, family, and they've asked me, why did I write it? Well, I have 3 reasons. And firstly, I run a leadership program every other year at Fletcher's. It involves Fletcher's staff and our key suppliers. This year I have 35 people in my class, and there's 40 hours of leadership training. And they've often asked me, beyond the PowerPoint, do you actually have notes on these things that you share with us? And I didn't. So I thought, well, I'll start to write these things down. The second reason is I've written lots of books for fun for my wife and I that aren't going to get published. And I thought, when I was doing that, I'd like to publish a book. And as I started to think about this content, I thought, well, this would be a great one to actually publish. And the third reason is this concept of leaving a legacy. You know, I would like my children to know the things that I really like to share with them, for them to share with their children and their children's children. So those are the reasons that drove me to actually write this book. There's 3 parts to it. And the first part is a good man. The second part is a great dad. And the final part is a loving husband. Now, from my point of view, I'm a man, of course, and I wrote it that way. But everyone who's read it, male and female alike, have said it's equally applicable to both genders. What I'd like to say to you today, as you're a group of varying age, when I'm speaking to you, I'd also like to think I'm speaking to your children and your grandchildren and the staff that you work with through you. Because I'd like to have you share this wisdom and these ideas with people that you care about so they too can have a brilliant life. Because that's really what it's about. A good man. Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-realization in knowing you did your best to become the best you're capable of being. John R. Wooden, otherwise known as Coach Wooden. This is my first role model, my first mentor as a little boy, an 8 and 9-year-old, living and breathing UCLA basketball, which won 10 out of 12 national championships under his control. He's regarded as probably the greatest coach in American history. I didn't realize until much later in my life what an incredible influence he had on those around him. If you haven't studied his pyramid of success, you should. And to me, that's what drives me to be the best man I can be. And that's what this first whole section is about. Chapter 1 is about Benjamin Button, got a head start with wisdom. My favorite quote, as information doubles, knowledge halves, and wisdom quarters. Wisdom's a funny thing. Usually it's only available in hindsight. It happens after the event in which we could have used it. As we reflect back and think about what just happened, others chirp in and tell us what they would have done with their knowledge bank, their wisdom, and all of a sudden we think, well, yeah, that would have been really handy an hour ago or a couple of days ago. Think about the case of Benjamin Button, a man who was born old and who grew young. Imagine having that wisdom inside of you before you need to use it. How much more successful could you be in life? My messages in this chapter are that for some reason, as a little tyke, a little 5-year-old, I understood wisdom. I understood that the people that were older than me, my teachers, my family, had wisdom to share with me that I listened to. And I used to consider all the other kids around me, to a degree, as bobbling heads. And I understood what was going on because I listened to people. And I think that is a lesson for me that's just inside me, but I've tried to share with my children and the people around me. Wisdom is everywhere around us. But it's whether or not you absorb it, whether you're open to absorb it, whether you teach your children at a very young age to take in and discern the information that's provided to them, that we don't have to reinvent things ourselves. I hired someone a couple years ago who turned out to be a previously undetected recruitment error. He was a business coach. He wanted to be in real estate. We brought him in, we taught him our Fletcher's formula, the Fletcher's way. It's kind of a foolproof if you follow it. And he wasn't following it. And there were several discussions between others. And then I called him in and I said to him, I don't really understand why you're trying to reinvent the way to do real estate. We're teaching you how you can be successful. And he said to me, my way of learning is I have to do it through trial and error. I have to make trial and error. I have to make my own mistakes. I have to learn myself. I said, well, you've learned a really big one now because you're now unemployed. Seriously. Like a grown-up telling me he cannot learn wisdom from other people. He can't learn from what we all know, 45, 50 salespeople being successful. That's the problem. So many people don't accept what's around them. There is wisdom everywhere. And I encourage you to encourage those around you to absorb it and take it in. I'm special, you're special, everyone's special. Every single person is sacred. Sacred means special, precious, a treasure of true beauty. That means you. When I was 5 or 6 years old, my mother, 1970s, my mother told me I was special. Just a little guy, off to school for the first time, and she said, I want you to understand something, is that you're special. And I can remember to this day, my own thoughts at that time was, if my mother thinks I'm special, doesn't everyone's mother think their child is special? Isn't everyone special? And I have to tell you, it's driven me since I'm 5 years old, that everyone around me I think is special. I treat everybody well. I treat everybody with kindness, because I think everyone deserves that. And one of the successes you have as a leader is taking the time to understand the people that are around you. Take the time to really get to know them as people, to know their strengths, to know what makes them who they are. And that will help you to be a significantly more effective leader. And I think that idea that people are special is rare, because I don't think most of us wake up every day and think that. We all think about our own lives, but think about everyone you interact with, whether they're the cleaner, whether they're the receptionist, whether they're your number one salesperson. Everyone's got issues. Everyone's got stuff going on. Everybody's got challenges. I've told my children since they're very, very young, everybody has issues. Everybody has something. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes of what you see. Everybody has something. Everybody's got special situations. Nice is as nice does. a smile is so sexy, yet so warm. When someone genuinely smiles at you, it is the greatest feeling in the world. The one common denominator of everybody at Fletcher's is we only hire nice people. And sometimes when their evil twin shows up to work, they're no longer employed by us. I've actually said that to people. You seem so nice in the interview. What happened? Everyone I hire at Fletcher's, and I say through the interview process that we only hire nice people. You seem like a nice person. Everyone you're going to meet is going to be really nice to you and really helpful to you. And then I see them at the 1 month, the 2 month, the 3 month, up to the 6 month mark of their time with us. I spend time either on the phone or directly with them. And they always say, everybody's so nice. I said, I know, I told you. And they said, yeah, but I just thought you were saying that. But everyone is so nice. I think nice is super important. But I learned a lot of things about nice. If nice is being nice to be manipulative, to be Machiavellian behind the scene, it's not a very nice thing. But if nice is genuinely how you feel, that you want to leave people feeling better off as a result of their interaction with you, then that's a good thing. The byproduct of being nice to people is you get more. You get things that you want. And it's not the reason of doing it, but it is the byproduct. And I learned that so long ago, that by bringing somebody flowers and making their day, or being friendly to someone working in a checkout of a supermarket can make their day. It makes a huge difference to what you get, to how it works for you. So there's double reason of being nice. One, it's a great way to lead a brilliant life, to shed positive feelings and thoughts onto people, and vice versa. The nicer you are to people, genuinely nicer they are back to you. But secondly, you get more. Your life is more enhanced. You have a more brilliant life. Searching for El Dorado, the secret life we all want. Many persons have a wrong idea of what constitutes true happiness. It is not obtained through self-gratification, but through fidelity to a worthy purpose. It isn't money. It isn't gold, as El Dorado everybody thought. It is happiness. But happiness isn't drinking from the Kool-Aid. Happiness is a self-satisfaction of knowing you've done the best that you can do, that you can be the best person that you can be, that you're satisfied with what you have, not longing for what you don't have. It's a satisfaction with the journey that you're in, as well as the destination. So many people don't understand that the journey constitutes about 95% of the activity. You go to a baseball game and you watch this whole game for 2 hours, down to the last strike and the last out, and does your team win or not? You go home happy or sad based on your team winning. I was at a football game a couple of seasons ago. I'm a Bomber supporter like Christopher, and we played, I think it was Carlton, and I was at the game, and we were winning, and in the last second, Carlton kicked a goal and we lost. And my daughter and I went home like this, you know? And how different would we have been if that was just a point? Completely different. But the journey, we had a great time. We thoroughly enjoyed our 3 hours together at the football. The journey is so important to this. But I've spent so much of my life not happy through a lot of circumstance I'll cover through the book, that to be happy is so profoundly different than to not be happy. To be satisfied with what we have, not always longing for what we don't have. Teaching our children from a very young age to appreciate what they do have, not what they don't have. My kids have been told since they were this high, and they were reminded regularly that what they have is only because of what myself and my wife have achieved. It has nothing to do with them. When they're older and they grow up, what they have in their life will be because of what they do for themselves, what they bring to their life. So don't get all cocky with what you have compared to what other kids have. Appreciate what you have because we've given it to you. And I think it's a really important lesson. I think there are so many spoiled children out there. There are so many spoiled employees out there. People complain about the Gen Ys and the Millenniums. They're just the next generations coming through. They're just like everyone else before them. But they need to appreciate what they do have. And I think that's a really important lesson. Being happy is what it's about. If you can't be satisfied with what you have, what are you here for? What are you doing? I worked in a law firm. I've worked in accounting firms, the top of town, where all these partners work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And I'm not kidding. And they're by the bar at 8 o'clock at night, and they never go home. And they complain about the fact they don't really have a family life, and their children don't really know them very well. And then they go on to their second marriage, and they have more kids. and they do the same thing. What makes you happy? What brings you satisfaction? It's your book, but nobody else is going to put it right for me. Nobody but me is going to change my story. It is your book. This is like, to me, an absolutely massive concept. How many people take the time to sit down and reflect on their life and say, this is what my life should look like. When I'm 85 and I'm sitting in my rocking chair and I'm reading my book of life, is it a bestseller or is it a boring book putting me to sleep? You have an opportunity to do in this book of life what I've done in my book. I've created 3 sections that mean so much to me. Being a good person, being a great dad, being a loving husband. That's what means a lot to me. And then I fill it with chapters that matter. You have the same opportunity in your life with your own book. You have an opportunity to sit down at whatever age you are and map out, what do I want from my life? What are going to be the highlights? What are the key chapters? What are the sections that really matter to me? Health and fitness, entertainment, travel, family life, my career. What's it going to be? What really matters to you? Have you ever done that? We all get up every day on this grind that we're on. From the time we're little, we get up, we pack our bags, we go to school. We do that every day for 18 years, or whatever it is, through uni, if we go to uni. And then we get on the treadmill of work. And we do the same thing. How much real life lessons do we ever get? How many people tell us to sit down and write out all of the sections and chapters of our life that we'd like to achieve? And you might not have every chapter filled in, but you can add to it as you go. When I was 30, I decided that chapter 55 of my life, when I was 55 years old, was going to go to Antarctica at 30. And I wrote it in. And the reason I chose 55 is I knew I would have a bit more time, I'd have a lot more money, and hopefully I'd have a love of my life to share it with, as I did. And I went when I was 55. It's a book of your life. Why not spend some time focusing on it, filling in the sections and the chapters that matter? I know this is like unconventional thinking because we haven't been brought up to do that. We don't plan our life. Our life plans us. We're on this treadmill from a very young age. We didn't decide to go to first grade, or whatever you call it, first grade here. We didn't decide to go to the kindo that our family sent it to us. We didn't decide a lot of things. We just were put on this treadmill and we do it. It just happens. Why not take the time to start to plan out where your life goes from here? And what about talking with your kids and the people that work with you and asking them what would be important in there? Imagine doing an exercise. Imagine spending an hour or two with your team or your family in a room, sitting down and writing out their book of life, writing down their sections and chapters that matter to them, what they would like to achieve, what would their bucket list look like. I've had a brilliant life. Despite some ups and downs and happiness and unhappiness, I've had a brilliant life. I've done so many things, live with no regrets, because I have a book of life. I know what it is. Be responsible, accept responsibility, and live responsibly. This is a really long quote, all right? So bear with me. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcomings, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails with daring greatly, so that his place shall never be those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt, one of the great men of all time. If I was to have died when I was like 17, 18, I've always said to everyone, put on my headstone, he's responsible. Right? Always been totally responsible for what goes on around me. I'm so responsible now that I have a completely well-written out document of everything that happened in our life if I was to die. Because I've heard of so many men, women too, who just die suddenly and leave their families in a lurch. I don't want to be told ever that I wasn't responsible. I have coached and counseled more people than I guarantee anyone in this room, and possibly the collective in this room, through the years that I've had in senior management and HR and as a CEO. And there's two groups of people that come in for counseling. There's those that take responsibility, who accept the fact that they are the reason the situation is as it is. It doesn't mean that they're not saying, hey, there is contributory reasons, and if I had this support, it would have helped me more, or this, and I should have taken responsibility and got that. And then there's the people who don't take responsibility, who make all these excuses, who blame everyone else. Those people never achieve. Those people are not worth having in your organization. The person who stands up and says, you're right, I could do a lot better than I've done. I should have done a lot better than I've done. Give me some guidance and some structure, and go away, and they come back and you see that they're advancing and improving. They're the people you invest your time in. Those people that don't take responsibility, and I say that to them, I say that's the classic sound of someone who shouldn't be employed by Fletcher's. And if I'm proven right, you won't be here. So taking responsibility for your actions, for your life, for those around you is so important. And so many people just don't do it. They just aren't accountable. They're just not responsible. They just don't have that responsibility in them. And I tell you that if you can bring that into your children or your grandchildren or your young employees that work for you and make them accountable and responsible for what happens in their life, they will be significantly more successful and thankful, and they'll have a more brilliant life. It's a really critical thing, and I just think it's lacking in so many people. Don't be adverse to adversity. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. Conan the Barbarian loved it. And also Nietzsche actually originally coined this phrase. When I first wrote this book, that wasn't a chapter in this book. And it's interesting that it's chapter 7 because that's my number, 7. And I put it in there because adversity has been such a major part of my life. And that's okay. The reason I've added it is when it was read by a few people at work, when I first wrote it, one of them said, who's read it now 4 times, said, you always talked about how adversity had made you stronger, how you're such a strong person as a result of it, but you don't talk about it in your book. And I thought, oh yeah, good, wrote it down and talk about it. When I was 5, my father had a nervous breakdown, and he was schizophrenic the rest of my life, or his life until he passed away. When I was 5, I was in mental institutions with a father in a straitjacket, right? So it's not exactly like this wonderful Bambi childhood that I had, because I didn't. But it didn't matter. And I thought it even then, it doesn't really matter. Right? In October, I'm having 2 more surgeries on my hips. That'll make 16 surgeries I've had. How many of you had 16 surgeries? I don't really care. It doesn't matter. Because what life is about is this road in front of us. There's this road that's there for us to take. There's these challenges. There's all these stimuluses, as Dr. Covey says, and there's our responses. How we respond to adversity is what makes us who we are. Do we get up and keep fighting? Do we learn from it? Do we learn how to avoid it in the first place? Do we learn how to get on a different road so we don't even come across it? I love that picture when I found it, because that's perfect for the way I describe it in the book. Because life is all of these roads that we're on, and we come up to all these T-intersections where we have to make decisions. We have adversity thrown at us all day. One of my catchphrases is, life isn't easy. I don't think it's easy at all. I think it's a real challenge for those of us who take it head on. All day long we face adversity. How we face it, how we learn from it, how we overcome it is what makes us who we are. So I don't think adversity in the slightest is a bad thing. Do you have to lose to learn? Not really. A lot of people talk about that. It's the greatest lesson and whatever. I don't like to lose. I hate to lose. And I learned that from Coach Wooden. He hated to lose. I'm a winner. In my head, I'm a winner. I want to win. But if I lose, all right, that's okay. If I learn from it. But adversity is something you can't avoid. It's going to happen to you. You're going to have challenges in the home life. Your kids aren't going to be exactly what you thought they're going to be. Your employees aren't going to be perfect. Your work's going to have ups and downs. The market's going to go up and down. Disruptors are going to come into it. You're going to have health problems. You're going to have a car accident. These things just happen. Do they throw you off and do they ruin your day? I try to teach our salespeople that when you lose a listing, learn from the lesson and move on. Go get the next one. Don't let that one cause further defeat. Doesn't matter. So adversity is a really powerful thing in our lives. It's there. Learn to live with it. Learn to overcome it. Learn to make it your friend. Learning, you've only just begun. You are your greatest asset. Put your time, effort, and money into training, grooming, and encouraging your greatest asset. Many of you would have listened to or heard of Tom Hopkins. He's a great real estate trainer. Fantastic. Old school, but you'll learn a lot from him. I'm preaching to the converted. You're all here giving up 2 days of your time to learn from one of the best in the country, Real Estate Academy. Learning has never been more important than it is today. We are 24 months away from lack of knowledge, right? That's it. It is changing so incredibly fast. I don't listen to music in the car. I rarely listen to music in my headphones. I'm listening to Real Estate Academy Hot Topics. I'm listening to TED Talks. I'm listening to the TED Radio Hour. I'm learning all the time. I'm downloading podcasts continually so I can stay relevant. I do it for Fletcher's to stay relevant and for me as an individual to stay relevant. It's never been more important than it is right now. If me as the CEO, you as the leader of your organization, don't know what's going on, you're not aware of all of the opportunities out there for your company to go up or go down, then you're really not doing your job. If you're not staying relevant, you will become irrelevant really quickly in today's world. There's two things that are going on that's never happened to us before. One is the pace of change is faster now than it's ever been. It's faster in the last 12 months than it's ever been. But the nature of change is different than it's ever been before. We can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow anymore. We don't know what's going to happen. When I started in business, it was 10-year strategy plans. Then it was 5, 7 years. Then it was 5 years. Then it was 3 years. If you're in a big corporate and you have to make a multi-million-dollar investment in a technology platform that's going to see you through, good luck. Because the minute you're about to make a $5, $10, $100 million investment that's going to take 1 to 2 years to implement, it will guaranteed be out of date by the time it's functional. So good luck making a decision. We're all facing that. So if we're not learning through all the various mediums that you can learn from, then you're really going backwards. Have the career you were meant to have. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. Steve Jobs. That's a great luxury if you can actually love what you do. I spent the first 20 years of my working life, or maybe even more, not really loving what I do, but loving the job, doing as best I could. But then I got into real estate. And the last 14 years have been fantastic. I really love the nature of the work and what we do. This section is steeped in how you get a job, how you build a career, how you think about yourself as an employable person. And remember, when people throw out things to you like in the next 5 years, 20% or 25% or 40% of the jobs we know today won't be there, they're not kidding. Right? If we all think in this room that we're going to look back on real estate in 3 years from now and say it's the same as it is right now, we're kidding. Right? I know it doesn't change the fundamentals. People need a house to live in. People need a house to rent, whatever. It's changing. Our model is changing. The disruptors have found us, right? And they're everywhere. Barbarians at the gate. So our industry is changing rapidly. It will not be the same. So if you're not thinking about your career and how you keep progressing for you and your team, you're not doing the right job. Think about careers. Think about how much preparation goes into people actually getting a job. So you have a bunch of children who have gone to high school, some of you. Some of you have gone to high school and they've decided to take on a career course at university, business, law, whatever. How many of them have sat down with lawyers and found out what it's really like to be a lawyer? How many have gone to the career advisors to find out that if I do this course, what jobs can I get at the end of it? What's projected 3 years from now as to the jobs that are available for someone doing this degree? We don't do that. We're not taught to do that. We just follow on this path. And I find that incredible. So many people I meet do not prepare for the next stage. I look at Fletcher's and say there's two things that we have to do for our employees. One is to make sure their day-to-day environment is good or better than anywhere else they can work. And number two, that the longer they stay with Fletcher's, the greater their career hopes are. That we enhance their career by staying with us. That's our job. Their job as employees is to keep growing and learning and becoming better and better and become more marketable. The more marketable they are means the better they are for us. So there's a lot in here about careers and how you can have the careers that you ultimately want to have. Say it with meaning. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. Stephen Covey. I'm a really big fan of this chapter because my father-in-law used to say to me, when we do a job, and he was very handy, and he taught me to be handy, that if you have the right tool, any job is simple. And say it with meaning to me is my tool chest of really important things I've learned over my life that I can pull out whenever I need to. There's a whole range of different thoughts that I've got. One came from Christopher, who I met 21 years ago, and he taught me about dream big. And dream big features big in my life. Always think the big picture. Always think what can be achieved. Always look for the positive, the big horizon that you can have. 5-step planning process. A way to know where we are, why are we here, where do we want to go, how are we going to get there, are we getting there? Quality saves, always invest in good things, always spend the money to get the upfront right result. Sunk cost, don't worry about what you spent yesterday, it doesn't matter tomorrow. All sorts of these sayings that I've built up in my head that help me analyze every situation. When I'm in a meeting and people are talking, my brain's going through quality saves. That sunk cost, it doesn't matter that we've already spent that much on that. What's the process of how do we do this? What's the 5 steps to get this implemented? How hard would it be? Seek first to understand. When I came into real estate, our people just sat there and they opened up a folder and they just presented page after page after page after page. There was no questions. There was no seek first to understand. That was my major message to Fletchers when I first got there. Seek first to understand before trying to be understood. Super, super powerful. There's all sorts of those in there. And the more you have in your tool chest, the more you teach your children to have in their tool chest to be able to analyze the situation by having some good tools up here when things come up, the more successful they'll be. Because remember, every single day, we are presented with this decision tree where we hit the fork in the road. We either go left or we go right. Which way do we go? And I'll tell you what, by having some really good definition in your head, and we'll talk about values later, but by having some really good definitions in your head, it enables you to stand there for a minute, think about how significant this fork is or not, and what should I do based on what I know. Not just take random, I'll go left or I'll go right, which, to be frank, I think so many people do. The key is understanding how significant is this fork in the road. How much of a difference in my life is it going to make if I go left or I go right? And remember, we probably face, I think they say we face, 300 or 400 of these a day. Decision points where we decide whether we're going to wear that, wear this, do that, go that, drive this way, go that way, all day long. Some of them are insignificant, some are quite significant. So just before I finish, just to sum up, life begins by being a good person. Whether or not it's your man or woman, a good woman, to be the best that you can possibly be is that cornerstone for having your brilliant life. It gives you that opportunity to then go on to do the next chapters that might be in your life. And it's not for everyone. Not everybody wants to have a relationship or everyone wants to have children, that's fine. But for those who do, this is the way I've written the book, because that's what I've always wanted. So a great dad, when I was 5 and I had the father problems, and I was a boy's boy, I was a sports fanatic and all of this as I was, all I thought about when everyone said they wanted to be an astronaut or a tennis player or a basketball player, I wanted to be a great dad. That was my first passion. That was my first career choice. And it never varied. My book of life, my entire career has been built around my children. I've turned down some incredible job opportunities which would have taken me away from them. So great dad has always been so present for me. My father was my teacher, but most importantly, he was a great dad. Bo Bridges. These are my family. That's my wife Sally, my beautiful wife Sally, my son-in-law Rob, and my daughter Seychelle, my son Landon and his wife Laura, my mother-in-law Sheila, and in this picture my 2 stepkids aren't in it, but that's my family. It gives you a bit of an idea about it. So there's lots of things that I've put in here about being a great dad. Lots of ideas and thoughts around it. And it starts with this idea that ever thought of being an architect? Whatever good things we build end up building us. Jim Rohn. We are architects. When my kids were young, I said to my older brother, who's sort of a real mentor of mine, he's 10 years older, he's wise, he never had kids of his own, but he was as close as I had to a father. And I said, Jeff, one day I was talking to him on the phone, I said, what's really struck me is that the life my kids are living right now, everything they do, the structure around them, what happens to them every day is because of what me and my wife, what we bring to the equation. We are creating their existence. And he said something like very profound, like, duh. But I never really thought of it before because we were the children being raised in that other environment where they did it for us. But all of a sudden, you're as a parent or as a leader of your business, you're creating the environment that dictates what happens around and what they can do and achieve. So how much planning and thought has ever gone into from a parent to their children? Really sitting down and analyzing the kids and thinking about them and saying, all right, well, this is the type of child we have here. What's the best thing we should do for them? What's the best opportunities? What should we open up for them? Probably very little. It's mostly just, the kid showed an interest in dancing or in netball or whatever, and you throw them in that direction. Is that right? Should we not be thinking about what their strengths are and give them wide opportunities to experience lots of different things and see what might stick and what might work for them? And as they progress, how do we build these foundations in their life to give them a great life? The most profound thing I'm going to say to you right now, for those of you that have children, and I don't think most parents get it, is that your children are children for 1/4 of their life. For 3/4 of their life, they're adults. From the age of 20, they're adults. For the next 60 or 80 years, they're adults. You're not building a child, you're building an adult. Are you putting the foundations around your children to be successful adults? That's the key. That's what you really got to think about. You're not architecting a 5-year-old, you're architecting a 25-year-old and a 40-year-old. I remember in one of my law firms, we sat and engineered what's the perfect person to recruit. And we decided they were a 5th-year lawyer because that made us get 5 years worth of earnings. And some of them would rise up to partners, but the reality is we wanted as many as possible to get to 5 years. That's what we designed, a recruitment program to bring in someone who could be a 5th-year lawyer, up to a 5th-year lawyer. What are you doing with your children? Are you making them a great 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, or are you going to make them a great adult? I remember reading something when I was very young with my kids about this family that had some obscene number of children, like 19 kids. And they said, what's your secret? And they said, we never do for them what they can do for themselves. And I thought, that's pretty profound. And I never have. From the time my kids could make their lunch, they made it. From the time they could cook, they cooked. I never did their homework for them, ever. And they still talk to me about that. I'd show them, I'd give them guidance, I'd help them, I'd sit with them, but I'm not doing it. I'm not giving you the answers. It's your homework, it's not mine. I can't do it anyway. Ever try to do your kids' math? To be or not to be me. Your kids require you most of all to love them for who they are, not to spend your whole time trying to correct them. That is like so incredibly profound. It's my son and his wife at his wedding. That's another thing that my older brother shared with me. When Landon, my son, was about 6 or 7, he wasn't into sport. He was a lounge lizard, and I couldn't relate to it at all, and I would struggle with it, and I was trying to get him to play sport and do things that I did as a kid. And I called my brother up and said, I just can't relate to Landon. I don't understand. Why doesn't this kid want to go play sport? And he said, because he's not you. He's him. He's Landon. Let him be Landon. Let Landon figure out who Landon is. And I thought, well, that's another good bit of advice. All right? And it changed me, honestly. I don't take a lot of wisdom in this brain to change. And I just changed. I thought, you're right. He's not me. He's him. I got to make him the best person he can be. I got to make Landon the best that Landon can be. So we started exploring all sorts of things. We did everything imaginable that a boy under the age of 8 can do to find something he might want to do. We tried everything. We ultimately settled on baseball, which I'll talk about later, which is what he wanted to do. It wasn't me, honest. Him. He wanted to do it. But that idea that they're not mini-me's. They're their own self. They have their own personality. They have their own gene pool within them. Yes, nature, nurture. We nurture them a bit, but tell you, nature's really strong. Right? It plays a really significant role in the whole thing. So Landon's grown up to be a very self-assured, successful young man, doing really well, living overseas in London at the moment, doing the Aussie thing. I'm doing the American thing. You're 32 years. It was funny, I was once sitting in the audit room of Arthur Young, and we had all these international exchanges, and I was here in Melbourne. I'd come from the Beverly Hills office, and this young graduate, was sitting there and looking at the international program and how he could go over to Spain or Canada or whatever, and he said, have you ever thought about doing an international secondment? I said, what do you think I'm doing? All right, be there. That was said earlier today. Be in your children's memories tomorrow. You have to be in their lives today. This was a trip we took as a family. That's Pam and David, my other kids, in New Zealand on the Dart River in the middle of winter. It was freezing. We went and did a Lord of the Rings tour with great time, great holiday. Being there isn't just taking a holiday. It's making sure that when you're present, you're there for them. That you're understanding them, you're relating to them, you're talking to them, you're being with them, you're doing things that they want to do as well as things that you want to do. You're teaching them, you're talking about the lessons being learned while you're out there doing things. When you're hiking around the beach and you're doing things, you're talking about it, you're learning about it. You're talking about nature, you're talking about things. You're not just on your phone and occupying the kid for an hour while you can. You're actually spending time with them. Being there will build bond. There's this issue, you hear about, you have to be there when your child's born so you bond with them. Well, the truth is you never stop bonding with your children. The more you work at it, the more you bond with them. The nicer you are to your employees, the more you bond with them, the same thing. But with your children, the more you're around them, the more you engage with them, the more you have conversation with them, the more you share experiences with them, the more you talk about the why, not just the what we're doing, but why we're doing it. And what does this mean? The more you're going to bond with your children, the more mature adults they will become. So I think that's a fundamentally important thing, and being there today has never been harder. It's never been a more difficult challenge for all of us because of the demands that this modern world puts on us, technology at our fingertips 24/7. It's hard. But taking that time to spend time with your family, your children, and really getting to know them and them getting to know you, and talking about values and behaviors and things that are important, talk about the experiences they had. Don't accept, how was school today? Good. Tell me why it was good. What did you experience? What was different? What did you do today you've never done before? What's the thing you actually didn't like today? What's your least favorite thing today? What's your favorite thing today? Why? Find out. Engage with your children. If you can make a young child engage with adults, they're going to be more successful. They're going to have a more brilliant life. And that is a real challenge for today's child who has their face this close to their phone. The more you engage with your children, the more they'll be able to engage with other people. Daddy has no boundaries. Things can hurt and not harm us. In fact, they can even be good for us. And things that feel good can be very harmful to us. I was quite blown away when my son Landon, at about an 8-year-old, went to a friend's house. And it was a new friend. Landon had gone to a new school, and I went to pick him up, and my first question, with a smile on my face, is, "Did you have a good time?" And he said, "Well, not really." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, Ben has no boundaries." Those were his exact words. And I'm kind of like, what do you mean? So I drove over to a park, pulled over, we got out, we sat in the park and talked to each other. I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, Ben wasn't nice to his family. He wasn't nice to his parents at all. He was talking back to them, and when they told him things to do, he just ignored them, and it wasn't really nice being with him." We obviously talked about the positive things as well. I always try to get the positive out of the experience. But everyone needs boundaries. Your children need boundaries. Your employees need boundaries. You need boundaries. We all need boundaries. We all have to understand what's right from wrong. Because the reality is we're not going to be around our kids all the time. From the time they're 5 or 6, they start to go to school and they spend 8 hours a day away from us. They have to know right from wrong. They have to know where the boundary is. I talk about a story in this book where some friends of mine, when I was about 10 or 11, it's in the book in terms of the age, they found this big looked like a stick of dynamite to me, and they wanted to light it. I had boundaries. My mother would kill me if I survived the blast. And I tried to talk them out of it, tried to show wisdom. They told me to get stuffed. In American, I guess we didn't use those terms. I left, they blew themselves up. Both ended up in the hospital, lit the house on fire, all sorts of things. It was a quarter stick of dynamite. I knew boundaries. They didn't have boundaries. Right? You have to have boundaries. You have to understand what's right from wrong. Your children have to know, and those boundaries increase, but they have to know what they are. So you, when you're not with your children, can have a sense of satisfaction that they know to do the right thing. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of peer pressure. Can they handle that? Do they know right from wrong? Do they know when to say no? Because you're not going to be around them, and when they're teenagers, you're going to be around them even less. Have fun. Win and learn. Every strike brings me closer to the next home run. Babe Ruth, another idol. When my son decided on T-ball, baseball, I went up to Melvin Baseball Club, and they said, "Oh, you're American, great. We love American dads, but you know how to play baseball. Will you coach?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to," because Landon said he'd only do T-ball if I was with him. because he wasn't into sports. So I began my coaching career. I loved it. And I coached Landon all the way until he was under 17s in baseball. I coached these kids from T-ball right through to under 18s, and they won the state championships at 16 and 18. Same kids I had all the way through. All right? But when I started to coach, I thought about, how do I get through to these 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds? You know, how do I actually relate to them at their level, besides getting down on my knees? And I came up with this have fun, win, and learn. I think sports is a great teacher. I think when kids have fun, they take things in more. All of us do, even adults. But think about kids. If they're having fun, they're going to enjoy it, they're going to play harder, they're going to think this is great, they're going to want to come back. I believe, because I intrinsically like to win, that when you win, you have more fun. There's not much fun being on the opposite end of the score. And you learn more when you're having fun and you're winning. But winning to me isn't just about the score. And it isn't just about whether you got 4 and they got 3, or you got 70 and they got 68. It's about how you played. Did you do the best you could possibly do? My baseball teams had an overall record of 78-2. We clobbered teams. My kids had so much fun. And they learned so much. On Saturday, David, my stepson, plays basketball, and I started coaching him when he was in year 3. And I've coached his kids all the way through to now. And David's now playing under 18s. And I've used the same motto with them. And on Saturday, we finished top of the ladder, and we played in the semifinal, and we got beaten. We played a team that just played better, shot better, played better. We played really well, but they just played better, and we lost. I was so proud of my team. It has nothing to do with the scoreline. They tried so hard. They gave it their all the entire season. We had a great season. They did really well, and all I could say is really positive things about it. This concept of have fun, win, and learn are all related. Landon played on a school football team for a little while, and he's not a football player, and they put him on the seconds. And every week they were losing like 80-0 because they were playing schools that only had one team, while his school had 2 teams. So all the good boys were on the top team, and all the ones who didn't play footy were on the second team. And I went to the coach and I said, come on, this can't be good for the kids to go out and get slogged every single week, 80-0 and 70-0. Tell me you got a better plan than this. He said, oh, well, we separate them based on, the quality of the... I said, but for what end? This is a school program. There isn't even any finals. Why don't you mix up the boys so they can learn from each other? Some of the better ones can teach some of the other ones, and they're both going to be competitive. And he said, we don't do that. So Landon used to... all the kids in the team that were getting beat 80-0 showed no interest whatsoever. How could you? Right? So I think that's critical. Life's a magical adventure. One of the values of being very young is that you don't let the facts get in the way of your imagination. I think one of the greatest things we can do for our children is to teach them to have an imagination. In this life of reality where they're on social media, they're on their phones from a very young age, they're not having childhoods, they're not developing an imagination. And imagination is a gift that I think you can only give the young. And in my life with my kids, about being there was always about giving them imagination, giving them a great adventure. When we went to the beach, we didn't just go to the beach. We went searching for gold treasure. Pirates left. And we'd scour the beach till we found what we looked like a good spot where the pirates might have dropped their treasure. And while they're digging and I could draw their attention, I'd drop some gold coins in. They'd find the gold. We'd go buy Mr. Whippy ice cream. Everybody'd be happy. Every adventure we did was an adventure. 2 years ago, Sally and I were up in the Dandenongs, and it was winter, and we loved the Dandenongs, and we were walking around, and we saw these mushrooms that were absolutely incredible. Never seen anything like it. They were big and red with white dots on them. They looked fake, but they were real. And I took a picture, and I sent it to my daughter, who's living overseas, and she wrote back and said, there will be fairies under those. And because we were always looking for fairies. We were always out hunting for them. Giving your children an imagination, making things magical, making things special, is something that as a parent, it can never take away from you, and you develop that imagination in your children. You get them thinking. We kept imagination alive as long as humanly possible, and when my daughter finally said to me, you got to tell me the truth. Is there a Santa? I think she was 10 or 11. I said, if you really want to know, I'll tell you, but you can't come back from it. You sure you want to know? Because once you know, you know. And she said, I want to know. One other really funny thing is, the tooth fairy. We all love to do the tooth fairy with our children. And when Landon's a little younger than Seychelles, and we're doing the whole tooth fairy thing, and all of a sudden we see on his door a big one of those. She wrote a poster with a tooth fairy with a big red line in it and the red circle, no tooth fairies. And I went to her, I said, what's the story with the no tooth fairy? She said, Landon's afraid of the tooth fairy. Like here we're trying to do nice things for our children and I'm scaring them. But I think imagination is just so important, and you gotta share it with your children. Memories are made of this. There's a garden in every childhood, an enchanted place where colors are brighter, the air softer, and the morning more fragrant than ever before. Memories are made of this. We can't remember, that was Landon's 21st. We can't remember most of what happens to us. I have found that by documenting what goes on in the children's lives from the time they're very young has had a really profound effect on them, because they can understand the different inputs they've had that have made them who they are. So keeping things like logs, keeping photo journals. I had this idea when my children were born to start videoing them every 3 months in the same position, from the same disc. So my kids, in a 10-minute video, you see them grow up right before your eyes. 10 seconds, 15 seconds every 3 months. I've had a journal of everything that's ever happened to them significantly from the time they were born. Who was there when they were born? What were they like? I've written letters to them when they're 5, 10, 15, 20 as to what they were like, so they can look back on them. We film all the family stuff. My son's overseas, my daughter's overseas at the moment. They're both doing the Aussie thing. We got LA, London, New York with our 3 older kids, having great adventures. And Landon said, would you mind digitalizing all your videos so we can watch them? So I've spent the last few weeks putting all our family videos onto private YouTube stations so the kids can watch them. Because these memories are things that just are part of what we are. And it's not about looking back, it's about appreciating where we've come from. It's about understanding why we're where we were as to help us to get to where we want to go. And I think it's really critical. If you hold them too tight, they will break. Parents can only give good advice or put them on the right paths, but the final forming of a person's character lies in their own hands. It is so true that how much time do we spend with our kids every day compared to their day? How much time are we going to spend in their life overall, right? A couple hours as they get older, a couple hours a week you might see them. When they're younger, they're at school for 8 hours a day. You're at work 8 hours a day. You come home, you have an hour or two with them, they go to sleep. You got to learn to build the right values and behaviors and pillars of values in your children, but you got to learn to let go. You got to learn to realize you've got to trust them to do the things they have to do. I got to a point with my kids when they were like 17, 18, where I realized they wanted to hang with their mates and do their thing, and I just backed off, because when I was younger, my mother didn't, because she was a single mother and a bit of a complicated family life, and she wanted me to be her friend, and I didn't want to do that to them. And they both approached me and sat down with me one day and said, Dad, you're not close enough to us anymore. And I said, well, you know, what do you mean? I'm just trying to give you space. I said, you're giving us too much space. We want to do things with you. And I said, you know, tears, and said, okay. That's nice, you know, because I don't want to impose myself. It's hard to know because these kids just keep changing. The space you give a 5-year-old is different than the space you have to give an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. But if you give them too much space, you lose that influence on them. And don't accept for a minute the bullshit that people want to provide to you, that the most significant influences in their life are their friends. You're the most significant influencer in their life, and don't ever let go of that. I still am for my children. They call me about everything, all the major things they want to do. They want to bounce off me. Pam, my stepdaughter in New York, we talk all the time about challenges she has at work and challenges about getting which job she should take and all sorts of things. Be their advisor. Be there for them, but don't smother them. Let them know that you're there. As they get older, and I've started to treat them from about 18 as a friend rather than I'm their parent. I don't tell them what to do. I provide guidance and support and coaching as they ask for it. And sometimes I offer it. When I left Landon after the wedding in London, I sat him down and I said, I love what you're doing, I love all your progress, but I want to talk to you about 5 things. He said, okay, let's do it. And I went through 5 things that I think he should improve on. I didn't tell him he had to, I just offered my suggestions because I'm still his mentor, I'm still his coach. Yeah, I'm still his parent, but I can't tell him what to do anymore. So you got to learn to let go. So this idea of being a great dad or a great mom is a super important job. It's the single most important thing that I think we ever do, and so many people don't give it the time it deserves, or number 2, They just put other priorities in front of it and justify it. And I don't think that that's right. I think your children deserve to have you in their life and for you to make a profound difference on them having a brilliant life. I'm pretty confident that our 3 young adults are going to have brilliant lives. They're having them now, and I believe they'll continue to. They've got great foundations, and we're still working on the teenager, getting him through, but the other 3 are there. They're all doing great things as young adults, living overseas, going overseas, finding jobs, having careers, finding partners, doing really, really well. And that's because of that foundation that I believe we gave them. The third section in my book is a loving husband. A good husband makes a good wife. That's my wife Sally and I on our wedding day. Second marriage, we've been together 11 years, and it's made me profoundly happy from the moment I first went out with Sally. A world of difference of finding someone that is all the things I'll describe in a few minutes, and someone like Christopher who's seen the journey can attest to it. And I think this idea of being a loving spouse is the single hardest thing that we do. A husband is everything to me, and without him, it's just not the same. Being married is clearly the hardest thing we have to do in our society. We can all raise kids. They may not be as great as we want them to be. They may not achieve everything they want, but we can get most of the kids out into the workforce and living in their flats and their houses and living their life. 60% of marriages fail. My own belief is that of the other 40%, 3 out of 4 of those are crappy. They're just there because money, kids don't want to make a change. They're just comfortable, but they're not happy. They're not profoundly happy. They don't have a strong relationship. Fascinating study, the longest study ever done on well-being and happiness, conducted by Harvard University, been going on since 1919, I think it is, or 1921, one of those two, studying these people from low socioeconomic and from high socioeconomic. And they're studying them their whole life. And now they're studying their children. And now they're studying their grandchildren. It's the longest study. If you want to hear it, listen to a TED Talk on it. Right? What they found is that the single most contributing factor to a long, healthy, happy life is a good relationship. Someone who you can believe in, who can look after you, you can look after them, you can trust each other, you can have a great relationship. And I think it's fundamentally the hardest thing, and I think it's another thing we get no training on. We get nothing. Absolutely zip. So, I'm going to race through some of these. If it's naturally right. A successful marriage requires falling in love many times, always with the same person. That's Sally and I over the Serengeti in Africa. My brother said to me, after a second failed marriage and several longer-term relationships, he goes, you know what I've figured out? If it's not easy, it doesn't work. And that is just absolutely the issue. It's got to be naturally right. You've got to be with a person who it's easy to be with. If it's a challenge, if it's hard, if it's stressful, if it's unpleasant, it isn't right. My first marriage was like that. We persevered for a long time. It wasn't, not her fault or my fault, it just wasn't a match. Sally and I are absolutely, completely compatible. I don't like seafood or cucumber. She likes seafood and cucumber, but we get along nevertheless. We enjoy each other's company. Every Sunday, I would say to her without fail, I say, thank you for a beautiful weekend. And she says, another one? We've had over 600 beautiful weekends together because it's naturally right. And I think so many of us are forcing ourselves into situations because that's what's comfortable. That's what's happened. That's who we've met. But doesn't mean it's right. Just like hiring the wrong employee and you try to make it right, it doesn't work. Make love, not war. The greatest gift that you can give to others is the gift of unconditional love and acceptance. Bang! Super, super, super powerful. When Sally and I got together, we both had come out of difficult relationships. Both of us had unpleasant backgrounds in that situation. And we sat down and said to each other, all we want to have is a pleasant life from here on out. We want every minute to be pleasant. Now, unconditional love, I believe, is only naturally occurring between you and your children. Your children do something, you punish them, you put them in a room, whatever, 20 minutes later, it's all love and kisses again, who cares? You don't hold things against your children. But you do hold things against your partner because they speak differently, they have different ideas, they have different thoughts, they have different way of saying things, they like different things. You come from 2 different families, 2 different backgrounds. Most of us don't have unconditional love towards our partner. Things they do get us shitty. We decided that we would not do that. We would not hold on to any anger whatsoever. We would make love, not war. That this is what we would do. We would love each other all the time. If I'm grumpy or she's pissy, we hug each other and we say sorry and get over it, because I don't even want to have 10 seconds of unpleasantness in my life. And I'm not drinking out of Kool-Aid. I'm telling you the truth. Our view is you can choose to hang on to issues, you can live in the half empty, or you can live in the full. And my desire with Sally and hers vice versa for our relationship was to live entirely in the full. Same way we do with our kids. We don't stay angry at our kids. Move on. They're your kids. She's my wife. I want to have every single minute positive with her. And I reckon it's a real breakthrough. I didn't have that in my first marriage at all. It was a conscious thought to do this one differently. Not to get shitty at something she does and does and does over and over again and know she's going to do it and wait for it. Go, yeah, I knew she was going to do that. We don't do that. If Sally does something I don't like or I do something, we just tell each other, would you mind not doing that? Okay, how come? Tells you, all right, good, cuddle, good. Honestly, it's a profoundly different approach. Unconditional love with your partner, if you can manage it. This is my own invention. I'm sure some psychologists will say I've got rocks in my head. But the greatest pleasure of life is love. This is called the 4 L's. I believe there are 4 L's that have to happen. When you first meet someone, one of 2 things can happen. You either like them, and you start to see them because you like them, or you lust them. And I don't mean just in a, raunchy sexual way. I just mean you're attracted to them. And it can happen either way. Sometimes you like somebody for a while, and then you start to become attracted to them. Sometimes you're really attracted to someone, and you start to date them. And all of a sudden, you start to like them as well. And when there is lust and like together, you start to fall in love, which is the 3rd L. And you fall in love. And after a while of falling in love, if it's good, you start to love them. We love our parents. We love our children, but we're not in love with them. They're different things. The fundamental ingredient to be successful in a marriage is you have to be in love with them. I love my mother, but I don't want to live with her. You have to be in love with them. So the problem we have, and I'll do it from an accountant's perspective as being a chartered accountant, is let's add it all up and say the 4 of them add up to 100. And maybe initially like is 30 and lust is 40 and the other 30 is split between in love and love. And over time though, maybe you don't like them so much. You don't like the things they're doing and the like starts to go down. Well, the lust starts to follow. The in love starts to follow even more. And ultimately you realize, I don't even love this person anymore. So let's say in the best case scenario, you start your life as 100. Your relationship together is absolutely wonderful. You're rated 100. What if it only loses 2% a year? In 10 years, it's now an 80. And you didn't even see it happening. You're the frog in the boiling water. You don't see it happen. You don't realize that every year you lose a little bit of that like, a little bit of that lust, a little bit of that in love, until I don't even love them anymore. I don't even know why I'm here. That's what happens. And children are a major bummer in that whole sort of sphere. Can take the whole relationship right away from being your relationship. So, first of all, if you don't really like someone, as Dr. Fred, if they don't make your heart sing, if you don't really like what they're about, and there'll be more on this in another chapter, and you don't lust that person, and they don't lust you, in other words, your sexual relationships aren't of an equal level, you have no hope, in my opinion. You'll have a burning out of in love, love will dwindle, and you'll be that 60% or you'll be that 90% ultimately who don't really have a good relationship. So you got to do everything you can to foster being likable and liking your partner and lusting, creating romance, as we'll talk about, and staying in love and falling in love every day over and over again so you can stay in love and be loved ultimately. If you don't do that, it doesn't work. So I suggest to young people, I say this to all my young people in my team who are getting married, I call them in my office and I say, I'm going to give you some wisdom that you may not follow, but I'm going to tell you this wisdom that I firmly believe in, and I think you should do it. Because the generation before you who I've told who didn't do it are now divorced. So do what I'm saying to you. 6 months after your marriage, go and see a marriage counselor. And talk about all the things that give each other the shits. And then do that every 12 months. It might help keep your like and your lust on the same level. Because without the like and the lust, you can't stay in love. And if you don't stay in love, you're not going to love the person. That's my 4 L's. It takes two to tango. Get over it. Life isn't supposed to be fair. Get over yourself and be of service to others. Sally and I were fortunate. We went to Buenos Aires a couple years ago, and we went to La Boca, the home of the tango. And I used the tango there because the tango is all about two people moving in harmony, two people going in the same direction, two people supporting each other, two people on the same page. It's the most sensuous dance as long as the two people got the same script. And that's what life is all about. You got to support each other. You got to have two people who are each pulling their own weight. The weight might be different. You're intellectually, you might be different. One might have a greater propensity to earn. One might be a better cook. But both people have to appreciate the other person, and they both have to put in. And if that's not happening, and you don't have two people who are both pulling in the same direction, you're the 90%. And you got no hope, because that's what happens. Romancing your bride. Romance is the glamour which turns the dust of everyday life into a golden haze. If you want to stay in love with your partner, romance the socks off them. Take them out, buy them flowers, buy him football tickets if that's what he likes, go out to a nice dinner, be chivalrous. We never go out on a date that I don't open Sally's door. I say, could you just sit? And I open her door. I don't open her door 24/7 other times, but I always open her car door on a date. I'll always open the doors otherwise. But make the date special. Find reasons to be romantic. On Sunday night dinners, pull out the candles, dim the lights. Even if the kids are there, it's awesome for the kids to understand romance and the parents having romance. You want them to be good adults who understand romance. If you don't romance your partner, the love dies and you don't have a relationship. Private world. Sometimes the heart sees what is invisible to the eye. Sally and I have a private world. I've shared very little of it in the book, but we just have our own fun. We might have an event. We're into sevens, so we always try to get rooms with sevens or do things with sevens. And we just have this secret language of things that have happened to us in the past that we can reminisce about into the future. And remember that. We'll have a saying that we said at some hotel 5 years ago, and it brings back that memory. It makes us think about that. It bonds us. It creates that something for us. We went out to dinner not long ago with a couple of couples, and they sat one person, another person, another person, another person, not the two couples together. We sat together and held hands the entire dinner under the table. We talked to each other in between conversation. We weren't rude. We weren't being that couple that's not engaging. But we had a romantic evening together despite the fact there were two other couples, and they didn't. They just went out to dinner. We had a romantic night. If you don't work on your romance, it just dies. Are there really soulmates? Watch carefully the magic that occurs when you give a person just enough comfort to be themselves. This is Sally and I in Antarctica on my 55th birthday on the Antarctic Peninsula. You know what a soulmate is? And I never believed in the sort of the whole concept of it. The soulmate is someone who makes your soul feel good. We have said to each other dozens and dozens and dozens of times, you healed my soul. You made me feel better. You made me feel whole again. I had a very damaged soul when we first started dating, as did Sally. And I've got a healthy soul now. That's why I can be happy. Is the person you're with make you feel good? Do they make you be the best person you can be? Can you be yourself with that person? Can you really be yourself? Can you say the things you really want to say? Can you be the way you want to be or not? Does that person make you better? Is synergy happening? Is the sixth habit of Dr. Covey happening for you? 1 and 1 equaling 3. Together, are you better than you are apart? And no surprise that I finished the book on a 7, chapter 27, and it always had to be, you're the love of my life. I had to fill in the other chapters to get to 27. I don't want another pretty face. I don't want just anyone to hold. I don't want a love to go to waste. I want you and your beautiful soul. That was one of the songs at our wedding. This is Sally and I on our honeymoon in Venice. If you can't say to your partner with full conviction, you are the love of my life, you have a marriage in trouble. Think about when you first said you were the love of my life, and you fully believed in it, and you had this passion, and it was a 10 out of 10. And then when you say it in the future, it's an 8 out of 10, and you're kind of saying it just to say it, then you have a problem in your marriage. It's not going to survive, or it's not going to be any good if it survives. So that litmus test of being able to say, "You're the love of my life," and believe it with as much passion as the first time you said it, is an awesome feeling. And if you do all of those things, I think you can have that. And that's really the ending message I've got from being a loving husband, is truly and deeply want to love someone and have them love you back the same way. And if you can achieve that, you can have a brilliant life. So, the 3 parts in summary: a good man, being the best you can possibly be, being a good dad or a good parent, whichever you want to call it, is about investing in your children so they have great, brilliant lives themselves. And if you want to have the most brilliant life you can possibly have, then you've got to be that good partner, that good husband, that loving wife, so you have a great relationship. And if you have a great relationship, your children will know it. And your children will have a much better chance of having a great relationship themselves as they get older. Thank you very much.
Big round of applause, please. Lovely Brown.